Welcome to Talking Money. It's episode 16. Delighted to welcome Hannah back for this one. And we've got three topical personal finance stories to go through this week, starting with some new research from Fidelity, which I suspect was there to help them try and sell some ISAs, some individual savings accounts before the end of the tax year, which obviously we've had now last week. But they calculated that on average, we have made £1,744 worth of lockdown savings through cutting back on day-to-day expenditure, and that's since March when the pandemic started. It's a total of £91.8 billion. Hannah, what did you make of that calculation?
I thought it was a completely reasonable thing to come out with, actually. I would have guesstimated that actually is a pretty spot on figure as per what I had in my own head. And these are savings that are coming from exactly what we're all missing at the moment. Things like going out to eat in restaurants and days out with family and friends and going to the pub. Surprisingly, people actually spend more eating out in restaurants than they do going to the pub every year, it turns out, which is certainly not the case for me, but perhaps that's a generational thing. The thing that I do like about this research, and I completely understand that Fidelity is clearly trying to sell some ISAs here, but it is kind of this nice reminder of, if you take the time to try and invest even just a small amount of money, over time that can really grow. So let's take the eating out at restaurants example, for instance. So people saved on average £439 throughout the lockdown, having not actually gone out to eat at restaurants. That's not an enormous amount of money. I think a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice that if you broke that down to what is that per week and then put that into a savings account. If you did that over 20 years, that's more than £13,000, just more than. So it's a nice reminder that actually thinking about those long-term savings and actually thinking about putting even just small amounts of money away is a really good thing, and something that I think really all of us could probably do more of. The next big question is obviously how much of this nearly 92 billion actually is going to be put back into the economy when all this is over. And obviously we don't know, we can't possibly know that, but I imagine things like restaurants and pubs are going to have an absolutely boom summer, as I think I've said before. So I imagine a lot of people are going to be spending a lot of that money very, very quickly.
And it was interesting that Fidelity have calculated it just under £92 billion. The Bank of England are talking about a figure of 250, £260 billion. And I think it's just a slightly different calculation methodology being used here. But it's a loss of money, whichever way you cut it up. And that does become a big question. How much of this are people going to hang on to and do what Fidelity is suggesting here and actually invest for the long term? Because, as you say, even relatively small amounts of money here, once they're invested, they're assuming a 5% rate of annual growth. They're assuming charges of about 1.1%. But over time, over a period of, say, 20 years, that can turn into a significant amount of cash. How much will they do that with and hang on to and save or invest? How much will they take and go out? And I have to say, looking back at the Easter weekend, and I know the pubs aren't open yet, I know restaurants aren't open yet, but the amount of people out and about and meeting up with friends and in outdoor spaces, enjoying the sunshine, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a boom time this summer. If you're a pub owner, a restaurant owner, clearly you've been through a very difficult 12 months, but actually it should be a very bright time ahead, assuming, fingers crossed, we get some nice weather this summer. That's going to be the deciding factor.
We desperately need it, don't we? Especially as we don't know if foreign holidays are on the cards just yet. But yeah, I mean, look, if the last weekend, we're recording this just after the Easter weekend, I spent a fortune. It was like I had monopoly money in my bank because I just haven't spent anything for such a long time. So anything I wanted, I was just like, yeah, no, it's fine. Let's get a takeaway. Oh, it's fine. We'll just get another bottle of wine. Like, I did not even think about my savings whatsoever. And obviously that's not necessarily reflective of a whole summer, because it's just kind of one blowout weekend and we're still not completely through lockdown and back to normal just yet. But yeah, I mean, if that's anything to go by, then we are in for one hell of a summer. There are also people as well, though, that manage to not save any money, and they tended to be spending more money on things like the weekly shop, which was coming to an extra £15 extra per month, which I think is really reasonable, actually. I think I've definitely spent more than that. Things like more money on takeaway, again, that's definitely me as well. And more money on alcohol, which actually does surprise me a little bit, because I think if you do like to drink alcohol, whatever, you've unless you've really gone hard drinking this lockdown,
Yes.
you have to have saved money because drinking in pubs is so expensive. So if
Yeah.
you've been drinking even the same amount at home, you must have saved a lot.
Unless people have gone up in terms of the brands they're drinking and the quality,
Oh,
or not
maybe,
comparable.
maybe.
But yeah, I'm not a drinker, so I don't sort of know how that works. But yeah, clearly, as you say, it is more expensive to drink out than it is to, to pre-drink or drink at home before you sort of head out and see friends and stuff. But yeah, some fascinating figures here, and I think the key message from me always is be intentional about this stuff. So it's going to be far too easy as pubs reopen, restaurants reopen, if we can go away on holiday. It's far too easy to think, okay, I've had a good 12 months financially, I've saved lots of money, haven't been spending on the stuff I'd normally spend on. That also includes things like commuting costs. But don't go out there and just let it just sort of gradually disappear without thinking about it, because I think that's the danger here, isn't it? That after 3 months of having a really good time, you're sort of left with nothing to show for it, and you're going to think, oh gosh, back to normal now, and what do I do next? So have intention. A lot of people I've spoken to have said they're going to ring fence some of the money they've saved in the last 12 months and say, okay, that's putting me in a better financial position. It's money I can invest for the future. I can pay down debts, etc. And then I have a ring fenced amount to have my blowout fund to go and sort of see friends and family, to have some day trips out, to go to nice restaurants I've wanted to go to for the past year. And that's a sensible approach to it. But as we know, money and money matters are not always sensible. Sometimes the emotions take over.
No, especially when we've all been cooped up. I mean, I've said to you before, I would so much rather, of course, there are going to be those sections of people, that maybe they're business owners or they've got high paying jobs, whatever, that their personal finances are fine. And I would kind of more encourage them to, do go out and enjoy yourself, put some money back into the economy. But for the vast majority of people, because most people obviously aren't in that situation, I do hope that they don't just think, well, I'm doing my duty by going
Yeah.
out to eat every night for a month straight. I really hope that people don't spend that money this way, and young people definitely start putting it towards a first home or whatever. I mean, I was actually thinking I'm doing the opposite of a lot of people and getting more and more stressed as lockdown comes to an end, because I'm starting to think, oh God, my life that I've got so used to, it's going to change. And
Yeah.
one of the things I'm quite worried about actually is money, because living in such an expensive city, I have suddenly got used to the fact of, not paying for any lunches out if my schedule's all over the place and I haven't been able to have time to make food or whatever, and not commuting. And I've kind of had this realization, like, I don't know how I'm going to save any money when all this is over, because, changes to salary as well and things like that. And I'm actually so stressed about what comes next when suddenly life gets very, very expensive again. And I wonder how many other people, I'm assuming that's a young person thing. I know we're talking about a similar thing as we come on to that, but I wonder how many other people are worried for their finances when they come out of this, because suddenly they're not going to be able to save anymore. And that's a real kick in the teeth when suddenly you've got money just building up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that fear at all. And it maybe isn't just about money either. It could be a combination of, well, I'm going to have a lot more expenses coming up, so commuting, as you say, eating out, etc. And also, I guess, a social obligation to spend money. If you've got friendship groups that like going out to the pub and like going out to restaurants and things, so there's that element. But also, I guess there's a lot of fear and anxiety around any sort of return to normality. If people have become very comfortable with not getting up early, not going into a commute. I saw an article this week saying that the new normal, if you do go back to the office, is likely to be dressed down Friday every day of the week, because I've not worn anything other than shorts for the past 12 months. There's no way I'm not going to go back to an office, I don't have to, but there's no way if I went back to an office I'd be wearing trousers again. And I've just become so used to it. So I think it's entirely reasonable to have those sort of worries, those anxieties, not just about money, but about any sort of return to normality and going back to the old ways. But hopefully, again, we can all be intentional about this. We can all make some really positive choices and say, look, this serves me, this works for me, this lifestyle, this spending pattern, and I'm going to hang on to that post-pandemic. And a lot of people, I think, have a lot more say over that than they probably think they do.
I hope so. I mean, I think probably what's going to happen is that people are going to try and make that point, and then young people particularly are going to get called entitled and, just get on with it and come into the office and all the rest of it. And I fear that we're going to very quickly forget all these benefits and having enough sleep and things like those really basic things. But apparently you're entitled if you want to do that and work in an office. So I don't have high hopes, but yeah, I mean, I'm very stressed about life going back to normal, but we'll have to see what happens.
We'll get you through this, don't worry.